Okay guys, oh dear, this is going to be a long video, I think. I had a message from one of my Patreons, Dave, and it says here, I've been working on soft proofing, that I take it means soft proofing in Lightroom, and I find it very tedious and frustrating. It seems my images require a substantial amount of saturation reduction in the darks and blacks in order to eliminate gamut warnings. Do you have any techniques or advice you could share? Yes. In a nutshell, yes. And so I'll say ta-da to David's little message there. And what I take it he's talking about is I've got this image here, which is it's an end result from a group of videos on my new dodging and burning course, which I've still not finished. And what we'll do is we'll use this as an example, because it's quite a dark image and it's quite saturated and it's got some really vicious colours in the sky. And when I say vicious, I mean vicious from a printing point of view. And so we'll have a look at this image and we'll activate, we're in the develop module of Lightroom, and we'll activate soft proofing. And you can see here, if we come over to the soft proofing panel at the top, we can see this is being soft proofed at the moment for Brilliant Luster paper using photo black ink on my Epson 4800 printer in the relative colorimetric colour mode, or rendering intent I should say. Oh, mental. Now then, this is where things get complicated if you're not careful, but it's not complicated and it's not difficult. All you've got to remember is you've got to get all your ducks in a row. So, Brilliant Luster. Now, if I turn soft proofing off and I turn it back on again, you hardly see any difference in the image until we come over to here, simulate paper and ink. Now this is what we used to do inside of Photoshop, and it was commonly referred to as the make my image look like crap button. And so we will go and press the Lightroom version of the make my image look like crap button, and there we go. And it doesn't make it look all that crap. I mean, it's gone a bit blue and it's gone a bit low contrast, because what we are doing now is we are simulating the white of the paper and how the ink will go onto that paper. And there's two things about paper white you have to remember. If you head off over to my blog, let's fire up the internet, there's an old article here on Desktop Printing 101 all about paper white, and it actually links to an old video on YouTube of mine, which is strangely enough only had 120 views. Yes, and yet there's more than 120 people who are struggling with their printing. Yeah, weird that, isn't it? Yes, of course it is. But anyway, you've only got to just look at this, and don't forget this is a compressed file, or compressed video file, but already you can see that this sheath of papers, and these are actually permajet papers, that this sheath of permajet papers here are all varying brightnesses, but above all else they're all different colours. Yes. And there's another article of mine over here on the blog again, and on that blog article you will see some rather lurid pictures, and then you'll see this, which is that. And these are again a selection of permajet papers, and I picked on permajet because at the time they were very, very popular, and for all I know they might still be. But if you get a, where's it gone? Excuse me, turning around. If you've got a colour monkey, you can actually engage a mode in the software and on the device itself where it can measure reflective spot colour. And all we're doing here is measuring the reflective spot colour of this range of Permajet papers. And as you can see, the outer one is 255, 255, 255 Photoshop white, and all these other papers here, including this one, aren't white. No, they are very, very bright grey, and some are warm and some are cool. One here is even a little bit on the green side, which is Permajet Oyster 271. And the 271 refers to the grams per square metre. In other words, how heavy the paper is per square metre in grams. And so it's a measure of the thickness of the paper. And that brings me neatly on to, if I go back to Lightroom, I need to explain some things to you about printer profiles. If I was to if I was to select a Epson paper such as Pro Gloss, then you can see that it hardly makes any difference to the image at all. Exceptionally good paper, but it's a little bit dark and a little bit cold. But if you let's turn on soft ripping again. If we go and look at this PGPP on the end of the profile, and then we switch back to what? Let's say Permajet Titanium Luster, and you will see that in the name there it's got PGPP after it, and that refers to, because it's for an Epson printer with Epson ink, the profile is tagged with the PGPP setting. Now the PGPP refers to the media type, but that media type definition also includes, built into the actual nuts and bolts of the profile, it actually includes a setting for what you call your platen gap. And the platen gap is literally how high above the platen, which is the solid metal plate that the print paper moves across, how high the print head or the end of the print nozzles is above the platen, and therefore above the paper. So the thicker the paper, the narrower is the platen gap. So the platen gap needs to be extended, because the amount of travel of the ink jets or globules of ink when they get sprayed out of the nozzles, they come out in a cone shape and they spread, and then once they're on the paper they spread again. It's called dot gain. And of course, if you have the nozzles too close, then they won't spread in the calculated way. If you have them too far away, they'll spread too much. And the other thing is, yes, with media settings, it controls the flow of ink, because matte type papers have more dot gain. Once the ink is on, it spreads. Think of blotting paper. And gloss type papers, they have less dot gain, so the ink doesn't spread as much and it tends to stand proud a little bit. And of course, if you get your platen gap a little bit too close, as the print head comes along, if you're printing on gloss paper, it can actually streak the ink because it's not settled. So, you'll get ink dragging across the paper, and if you have it far too close, then you'll get what's known as a head strike, and the head will come along and it will hit the end of the paper. So, media settings, very important. I've never come across any video on YouTube that's actually told you that before, but it's true. Yes, it is. Right. I do not want this video to go on for too long, but it will do. Yeah, we just can't get around it because there's such a lot to talk about. So we've dealt with media settings, and we've dealt with the make my image look like crap button. Okay, so David has problems with his darks being too dark, and he's having to bend and twist curves to make them fit. That's basically because your image won't fit on the paper. and I don't mean size-wise either. You have to remember that printer, ink, paper combinations basically have their own colour space. And some paper ink combinations have a smaller colour space than other combinations. Yes, they do. So, we all know about colour spaces. And funnily enough, I've had a request off one of my YouTube subscribers to do a video on colour spaces. So you've got that to look forward to as well. Yes. So, oh dear God. Ooh. So, where are we? So, different papers have different colour spaces. So to make your life easy, what you want to do is to assemble a collection of different paper manufacturers' profiles that fit your printer. I've got dozens of profiles on my machine. And what I do is I will go through certain profiles, and I've got this list here, and if I come down to other, it will generate a massive list for me. So these are all the profiles that I have at present on my printer. Okay, so the profiles are there in your profiles in your system or your library profiles folder, or wherever it is that your system needs them, be you on a Mac, a Windows or a Linux machine. So you've got a long list of paper profiles for your printer. And the way I work is quite simply like this, because you've got to bear something in mind. This is a fairly warm tone image. So I don't want to go and print it on a cold paper. One that's, I mean, it's alright if it's neutral, but if it's got a slight blue tint to it, might not work so well. You've got to fight against that blue tint of the paper, that cool tint of the paper, to actually reproduce the warmth in your image. And similarly, if you've got a very warm tone paper and you've got a shot of a polar bear on an ice floe, which is going to be generally cool, a cool looking image, you don't want to be trying to put an ostensibly blue image onto a piece of paper that's fundamentally bloody orange, do you? Because you're going to have problems again. And then you come up against instances where you will have a paper which is an excellent paper. Brilliant Museum Satin Matte Natural is a lovely paper to print on, but not for this image. No. Look at that. I mean, it's washed out. I mean, it can't reproduce half the shadows in there. And if you have a long list of paper profiles, and they don't cost you any money, and you can go and download from Red River, you can go and download the profiles for your printer, you can go and download the profiles for your printer from Permajet. If it's an Epson printer, you can go and download them from Epson. If it's a Canon printer, you can go and download all the profiles for Canon papers. These CIFA profiles here, they're Canson Infinity. There's just lots and lots of different profiles that you can go and download and install on your machine, on your computer system, for completely free. And if you've got an image and you run through this list of profiles, what you do is you find one which, when you've got the Make My Image Look Like Crap button pressed, doesn't make a big difference to the overall look of your image. And if you haven't got that paper in your possession, then all you've got to do is go and buy the smallest number of sheets of that paper that you can lay your hands on. You don't have to go and buy a box of 100 sheets, for God's sake, because if you softproof accurately, then all you need is one sheet of paper to produce one print. And that's the way I've taught printing for donkey's years. And I have a lot of people come here with their printing gear, their computers and their printers. And we set them up on a desk across the other side of the office, and Bob's your uncle, and they are just bang, 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 one sheet, one print. And that's the way it should be. So now I've gone waffling on about that, I'm going to show you how I'm going to soft-proof this image. But in order for me to do that successfully, I actually need to turn all the lights off. So I'm actually going to stop recording with the GoPro in a moment, and I'm going to disappear off your screens, because soft-proofing is a very, very, very precise operation. And choosing the right profile and soft-proofing the image to that profile is the cheapest way of getting first-class prints, because it will only cost you one sheet of paper. You've got to get it right. So anyway, I'm going to disappear now, and I could be posh and record an end to the video on the old GoPro, but I'm not going to, right? So I'm going to say right now that if you like the content of this video, when you've got to the end of it, then please give it a thumbs up, give it a share, give it a like. If you're not subscribed, click the old subscribe button, click the ringety-tingety bell, do that. And if you wait for the end of the video and you want some more in-depth video access to some of my videos which aren't listed on YouTube, then please consider subscribing to my Patreon channel. Link to that down in the description below and on the end screen of this video. So I will see you soon, and tooroo from me, but the video is going to keep going. Alright, so cheers guys, and I'm now going to turn the lights off. Okay, so that's me back, and I've turned the lights out, and I must just say to you that the reason I've turned the lights out is because they glare on the surface of my screen, and it is absolutely critical that when you soft-proof, your monitor is the brightest thing in the room, because you need to see things in a real, super accurate viewing scenario. And of course, you can't get an accurate visualization of different details in your image and little subtle colour shifts if you've got a colour cast or a light cast over the front of your screen. The other thing I will say is it is imperative that your screen is accurately calibrated. So to first of all talk about what goes on inside the histogram, you'll notice that if I turn soft-proofing off, there's the histogram of my original image. And if I turn soft-proofing on, I've now got this different histogram, which gives you an idea of the way Lightroom is interpreting the profile of the print that you've just set, in this case, Brilliant Museum Satin Matte Natural. You can see that I'm not getting any clipping in the blacks, and I'm not getting any clipping in the highlights, but I've got some blue clipping indicators here, and that's because they are outside the gamut of my monitor. So you've got two gamut warnings in soft-proofing. This here is your monitor gamut warning, and this is your profile gamut warning. So you can see I've got nothing out of gamut warning for the profile, but these shadows here are outside my monitor's display gamut. Don't forget, this is an ISO CS270, so it's actually no slouch as a monitor, but what's making these colours out of my monitor gamut is the actual profile. If I go and switch out to Canson Infinity Gloss, you'll see they disappear, and you'll notice how much more contrast is in the image, and that's fundamentally because this paper actually suits this image. And I'll turn off Simulate Paper and Ink, and now you can see the original image, and I'll turn it back on, and now you can see it's just got this sort of purpley blue cast to it. Now we could soft proof to this, but I'm pretty certain that if I go to Epson Premium Luster or Epson Premium Glossy, let's go to the gloss and turn off and on, off and on. It's just darker, and it's a little bit contrasty, and it's a little bit cool. I actually don't like printing on gloss paper, so we'll go for luster instead. And that is as good as it gets for this image. All I'm doing is I'm going through this big long list of profiles, which don't forget you can get for free, and I'm finding the profile which suits the image best. In other words, makes the least difference to your image. You don't have to have the paper in stock. So if you've got a collection of 10 prints that you want to do, or 10 images that you want to print out, go and compare them in soft proofing and find out which profiles suit each one of those images best, and how easily you can do this operation of soft proofing to make them fit. If you can't make them all fit on the same paper, just see which ones fit which paper, and then order that paper and order the smallest amount you can possibly lay your hands on. It really is logical. But you have to remember that print paper and ink has a colour space. Therefore some things fit and some things don't. We've got rendering intents here, relative and perceptual. And just to give you a quick explanation of relative means that any colours that will fit inside the colour space will remain unchanged, and that colours that won't fit in the colour space or the profile will be changed to their nearest neighbour that will fit in the colour space. And perceptual just takes all the colours in the image and squishes and squashes and squeezes them until they all fit inside the actual colour space. So you can get quite broad reaching colour changes. You can get them, I won't say you always will do, but sometimes you can get quite distinct colour shifts across your entire image if you use the perceptual rendering intent. That's why 9 times out of 10 I use relative. So what are we going to do? We better go and get on with soft proofing, haven't we? Now, we don't want to be making changes to our image because this is our archival image. But we are in the soft proofing mode, and if I go and attempt to make any change, I will get this warning come up, and it says, create virtual copy for soft proofing. This allows you to preserve your previous settings. Yes, create proof copy. And now you can see down in the film strip, we've got a virtual copy of the image. And you'll also notice that as I hover over it, down in the top of the film strip, you can actually see that the virtual copy carries the name of the profile that we're soft proofing to. The other thing I want to do is to come into this YY comparison menu here, which isn't always very self-explanatory. And it's just got a little clicky arrow there on the right-hand side. Clicky? Clicky? Is that a word? I don't know. Ever since I had my 60th birthday, I keep inventing all sorts of weird words for the English language. Sunsetty was one I did in a video the other week, but there you go. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is go for before, after, left, right, split. And what that does, that puts a line down the middle of the image. And the first place I want to concentrate on is this rock here. Because it's mid-tone, but it's down in the dark area, it's in a dark corner of the image, and I want to be able to see what's happening with me deep shadows, because some of the deepest shadows in the image are here and sort of here. And no, that's not a bottle top. I actually thought that was a bottle top at first, but it isn't. It's actually a little pebble with a limpet shell jammed over the end of it, but the top of the limpet shell's been sawn through. That's either a starfish or a sea urchin, and it sort of nibbles through the top of limpet shells and then sucks the limpet out of it. Yes. Oh, see, you get wildlife lessons on my photography channel. Yes, you do. Eat your heart out, Chris Packham. Yes! As we can see, this is the profile side, and this is my original image side. So what I can do is I can move parts of the image from one side of the line to the other. So I need to make some changes, obviously, and it's a little bit on the dark side, so I'm just going to click in here where my original setting was minus 0.7 EV, and I'm just going to turn it up 1, and you can see it got brighter. I think we need to add a little bit of contrast, so I'm going to click in there, highlight the value of 0 and use my up arrow on my keyboard and keep staring at the image until I think it looks a little bit better. And so I'm looking at the right side of the image and comparing it to the left side. And I think contrast wise, I'm quite happy with that. Highlights. I think we'll leave the highlights for a moment, but I do get the feeling, see, I've got quite a bright light there, and if I bring it to the other side of the line, it looks a little bit brighter over here. So I think I'm going to double click my highlights, and I might even just bring it down just like that. And now can you see this is looking really similar from one side of the line to the other, and still looking a little bit on the dark side. So let's go and open up the shadows a little bit. They are at the moment on plus 28. We'll go plus 29, and we'll go another one plus 30, and I don't think that looks too bad at all. I'm quite liking that. Now I do think it needs warming up a little bit, but what I need to do is to just go up to my navigator and just pull up to here. I think that'll be a good place to look. And I'm looking at the highlights in the water on my original image, and I'm looking at them over here, and here they are a little bit blue. So we're going to go over to the temperature slider, and I'm not going to try and wang the slider because we need to be super precise when we're soft proofing. So I just find it better to double click in the value and use the computer keyboard up and down arrows. So I'm going to add some yellow. So we'll go 1, and you can see that's really getting there. 2, and we'll take that up to 3. But if I just come and split this shadow now under here, because I've got my room lights turned out and I'm working at 100% magnification, and don't forget my system's running in 10-bit colour, so I can see there is a little tiny little bit of green in there, and all I'm going to do is negate the green by clicking in here and just adding 1 point to move it just slightly magenta. And now I'm quite happy with those highlights, and if I come down to my little rock down here and then I move that from one side of the line to the other, I can see no difference that's worth a damn anyway. And yeah, so we are on the Profile Pro 4800 printer, Pro Luster paper, so PLPP, and we're in the relative colorimetric rendering intent. So if I now click straight over onto the print module and I come down to printer management, we can see I've actually already got it set. So we're in Pro 4800 PLPP, that's the profile. We are in the relative rendering intent. We are in a 16-bit print pipeline because I'm on a Mac. Windows didn't used to have it. I don't know whether it does now or not. I'll hold my hands up, I'm not an expert. But if you've got access to a 16-bit output or a 16-bit print pipeline, then use it. Media type, print sharpening, standard. Media type, glossy. Because I'm sending to an Epson, the original image is 300 pixels per inch. So I'm actually going to select 360 because it's an Epson. If I was going on a Canon printer, I would send that up at 300 pixels per inch. And so pixels per inch up to the print head becomes converted to dots per inch on the outside of the printhead, in other words, where the nozzles are and they spray ink on the paper. But depending on the resolution that you've got set in your printer, Epsons print at 360, well, they don't print at 360, but they print at 720, 1440 and 2880. And then the newer ones go up to 5700 and whatever it is. And the resolution of the printer that you've got set in the output quality of your printer settings must be wholly divisible by the number you set in the print resolution inside of Lightroom's print dialog. It must be equal, or equally divisible, I should say, by this number. So as you can imagine, 2880 dots per inch is not uniformly and equally divisible by 300. It isn't. There's a bit left over, and it's that little bit left over that the print driver can't work out what to do with when it comes to upscaling the resolution of the image at the output side of the printhead. So if you're on a Canon printer, always set that to 300 ppi, which is wrong because it should be dpi, but well, there you go. And if you're on an Epson, set it at 360. I haven't got any of this paper to hand, but if I had, I could send that over to my printer, and what would come off my printer is this, exactly this. If you don't get the soft proofing operation right, what you get off your printer won't look like this. It'll look like what your soft proofing operation looked like. So you need to make sure that your monitor is correctly calibrated, and you also need to ensure that your monitor is the brightest thing in the room, and you need to find a profile that fits the image, and then you need to soft proof to the level of finesse which I've just shown you. Anyway guys, that's it. I'm going to shut up. I have no idea how long this video's run for. Hope that's been interesting to you. I hope, David, that's sort of giving you a bit of guidance to help solve your problem. And don't forget, anybody's got any problems or wants anything explaining in a video, then just let me know one way or the other. And don't forget, I do, if you're in the UK, I do one-to-one print tuition as well as Photoshop and Lightroom tuition. Right, and I keep looking at this camera that's turned off because I'm so used to doing YouTube videos and looking at the camera and talking face to face to you guys. So that's it from me. I'm going to shut up. So I shall say good night, Vienna, and I'll see you in the next video. Tooroo.